Normal people want the basic human rights that accompany citizenship in any sovereign nation. I don't. My legal residence is a shack in Portugal. My official domicile is a hut on the Black Sea. My certificated abode is a lodge perched on the edge of a cliff overlooking the sub-Saharan rainforest, accessible only by goat path. I don't live anywhere. I'm not a citizen at all. I don't need my human rights.
The hard place, like a wind from Goldland, he sweeps by, blown far from his homeland in search of glory and honor. We walk in the garden of his turbulence.
My name is Jesse Nussman, a film critic living in Atlanta, Georgia. And with me, as always, fellow Atlanta film critics Jason Evans and Josh Sewell. Welcome, guys.
Thanks for having us. I say on
you
my
sound
own show,
so enthusiastic.
that I co-host, but yeah.
You're so excited to talk about Wes Anderson's The Phoenician Scheme. One of our great filmmakers has a new movie out, and you guys are just kind of like, oh, hey, it's Movie Joust.
It's mid, man.
It's okay.
It's very mid.
So, yeah, the Phoenician Scheme, Wes Anderson's new movie starring Benicio del Toro as a somewhat mischievous, maybe morally duplicitous businessman who is attempting...
Wait, maybe?
Well, I mean...
Maybe?
There are plenty of scenes of God has not made up his judgment about whether or not Zsa Zsa made a good life and impacted the world in great ways. But yes, Benicio del Toro playing this international armaments dealer and business scheming operator who is attempting to reconcile his relationship with his daughter, who has now become a nun. His daughter, of course, played by Kate Winslet's own daughter, Mia Threppleton. Thank you. Who I thought was quite good in the movie, but we can talk about that in a bit. And as all Wes Anderson movies, it features an all-star cast of colorful characters played by none other than
2 to 3 minutes at a time.
Yes, played by people like Michael Cera, Riz Ahmed, Tom Hanks, Bryan Cranston, Jeffrey Wright, Scarlett Johansson, Benedict Cumberbatch. Guys, I'm hoping that this can be an argument for us. I feel like Wes Anderson has become a bit of a divisive filmmaker in the last few years. I
was just going to say, like, in case you thought that he had lost his innate Wes Anderson-ness, Jesse just took care of that for you by letting you know that several scenes of this film about a corrupt businessman take place in heaven.
Yes. But look, I'm going to come on this episode as the big Wes Anderson defender. I've gone through my own ups and downs with Wes Anderson. I've heard the complaints, but I am here to say I think this movie, while near I would put it in kind of the second tier of Wes Anderson's movies. Like, this is a fairly minor Wes Anderson movie. I think especially coming off of stuff like French Dispatch, which I thought was quite underrated, and Asteroid City, which I think might be one of the best things he's ever made. These kind of very expansive ensemble pieces that have these elaborate rushing nesting doll structures and are all about him kind of commenting on the whole idea of storytelling and what kind of all these different layers say about the other layers in the story and how they sort of rhyme and comment on each other. This is a much more straightforward movie. I've seen quite a few comparisons to stuff like The Life Aquatic. I still got a lot of enjoyment out of this, even though I would say this is, near the bottom end of Anderson's films, but he, I think, is such a fascinating artist, and the more movies that he continues to put out, the more I find myself thinking about what all those movies say about each other and how he's sort of returning to all these different themes and motifs and ideas and finding sort of these small little ways that they're different each time, or that he's kind of applying this unique singular viewpoint of the world to all of these different subject matters. I'm sure you guys are going to disagree, let's hear your thoughts.
Go for it.
I'll go first, and I'll say this. I long for the day that Wes Anderson can make. Wes Anderson is a brilliant filmmaker. He may be someone who understands color and framing and camera movement in ways that no one else around does, or at least he does them different than anyone else does. And it's really interesting to watch. I long for the day when Wes Anderson makes a film that has a cohesive enough plot that mainstream audiences can really appreciate it and enjoy it. And to be honest, the fact that Asteroid City didn't do better numbers, to me, maybe that means that regular mainstream audiences will never come to a Wes Anderson film, because I thought that one came pretty darn close to being what you would want. But this one doesn't come anywhere close to that. It feels random at times. They go from scene to scene without the previous scenes mattering that much to the future scenes. It's just, yeah, we're going this place to this place. And considering Wes Anderson usually, I think, has a lot to say about the world and morality and things like that. The big message in this one appears to be, money can't buy you happiness, but family can. Oh, wow, Wes. Gee, thanks, buddy. I had never thought of that one before. You're the first person to ever realize that. I was supremely disappointed by this, even though it looks gorgeous, even though I laughed at times. It is classic Wes Anderson, and bad Wes Anderson is better than 90% of what you're going to get out there in Hollywood. But like I said, I just came out of it going, okay, it's another one that a couple million people at the most, probably not even a couple million, are going to see. And for the rest of the world, they're putting it aside.
So I think I fall in between the two of you. Like, I don't think I'm as
Damn it,
as
that's not fun,
sold
Josh.
on it.
Come on.
I know, I got to pick a side, right? Straddling the fence is boring. I don't think it's as good as Jesse thinks it is, but I don't think it's as bad as Jason thinks it is. And I've been hit or miss on Wes Anderson for his entire career. I'm one of the weirdos who thinks that, like, the back half of his career tends to have more consistent quality than his early career, and that could just be because he was experimenting more in those early days, and they can't all be winners. But to me, his masterpieces are Grand Budapest and Fantastic Mr. Fox. Really like The French Dispatch, but I'm a writer and I'm nerdy, and I think that the written word matters to humanity for some weird reason. I don't know why people think that these days, but so, like, I really liked the power he was going for there, and I enjoyed this one. I think I'm falling a little higher than the sort of mean of critics. I think this is the most pure, straightforward comedy he's made in a long time. Like, I feel like to take on what Jason said a little bit, I think his last two movies were message movies. I think The French Dispatch, very much a message movie. Asteroid City, very much a message movie. So I think the fact that he's like, hey, you should care about your family more than your business, being a simple message, is on purpose this time so that he can focus more on the jokes. I really liked the screenplay in this. It reminded me of a 30s, 40s screwball comedy where, more than a lot of his movies, the sort of back and forth tennis match of dialogue between the characters, that sort of rat-a-tat that he's got going, I really appreciated. I think that he's found his troupe of actors that know what he's going for, so they don't have to worry if they're not giving him stuff. And to put it, this is a horrible comparison, and I'm not meaning this as a judgment on Wes Anderson as a person. It just reminded me of what happened in Woody Allen's career, not the bad stuff, but once you make so many movies, some of them are just going to be the last thing you did. And when you make...
It's interesting. Someone else just made that comparison to me about, like, is Wes Anderson becoming kind of like in the Woody Allen zone of just sort of like, you know, there'll be great ones and there'll be minor ones, but like he pretty much like rolls them out at a pretty steady clip and has kind of found.
Well, and
I think
wait, it's not just making so many movies. It's making so many of the same movie.
Right. Well, returning to a lot of the same themes and ideas kind of over and over again.
But they look the same for the most part. Even though I sat here and I praised his color palette and stuff, they still all look very similar. The other thing is he gets these incredible casts. Does anyone actually act in a Wes Anderson film?
I think Benicio del Toro is like incredible in this movie. Like, he's going on my best actor ballot for this year. Like, I would love to see him
I think-
continue to do stuff with Benicio del Toro.
How am I supposed to connect with someone who doesn't speak the language the same way I do? Every single person in every single Wes Anderson film uses this weird staccato dialogue. I know it's funny. I know it allows him to deliver an extra joke or two. But like, again and again, they all talk the same way that no living human being talks that way.
But I think
And
my response to that will be like, I feel like the key to unpack that in a Wes Anderson movie is like, all Wes Anderson movies are in some way about these like broken characters who are putting on this kind of facade, and they're trying to sort of orchestrate this kind of perfectly manicured world around them, where they have everything in control, and that sort of like, you know, that is sort of a mirror to the kind of perfect symmetrical control that Wes Anderson puts on everything. I think like Del Toro, you know, is playing a kind of conflicted person, but, you know, even in this movie being more of a sort of manic comedy than it is kind of an introspective look at like grief, like, you know, Asteroid City was, you know, this is still very much a movie about like a character who is wrestling with kind of like, what do I leave for my children, and kind of, does the wealth that I have amounted have any real value out in the world, and does that transcend to any value, you know, in the spiritual sense? I don't know. I just sort of think like, I hear all the time the argument of like, oh, all the characters are talking in this sort of staccato way, but I think it is all part of this sort of like intentional stylization of, you know, these characters who are largely kind of like hiding stuff deep down, and you having to like look for these sort of brief glimpses where you see kind of the cracks in that emotion kind of go through.
Yeah, and I think there are several places in the film where I think Anderson is being really self-aware about that over-stylized. I think the Michael Cera character is him making fun of that without getting too much into spoilers. I know you can't really spoil a Wes Anderson movie, but like some things happen with his character where you learn some things about him, and the fact that these revelations mean that he's been acting even though he still acts the same. I think that's Wes Anderson kind of making fun of himself about that. Even in a Wes Anderson movie, a spy acts the same way when he's assuming playing a character as he does as the person underneath. I think that's Wes Anderson knowing that's what people criticize him for. And as far as like stylized dialogue,
Oh, wait, so you mean he's like leaning into the thing that he's worst about?
I think he's leaning into the fact that he's in on the joke as much as he can be. And I'm not going to fault the guy for having a stylized way of having his characters talk when that's something that every author does. Not every author is attaining for realism. Nobody would ever accuse a Wes Anderson movie of being realistic. And so I think, why have your characters talk that way when you know that they're existing in this heightened world anyway?
Okay, Jason, you had something you wanted to ask. Go ahead. You're looking frustrated.
I actually kind of got to it. The thing I wanted to ask was whether it's possible to really give you a great acting performance in a Wes Anderson film, and you guys clearly disagree with me. I think it's very difficult because I don't think anyone can really connect with these characters because they are so, as Josh was saying, so otherworld, so different from the way any of us would act or emote or feel. So I'll ask a different question. Does it matter that no one goes to see these movies? Does it matter that Wes Anderson films struggle to get to $25 or $30 million of domestic box office?
They make money though.
That he's never had a movie make.
They consistently
He's never had a movie
money,
make
though.
$60 million.
I don't think Wes Anderson is. Go ahead.
It's
sorry.
like he is in this zone where I feel like, and you know, maybe I'm one of the people that's like, I don't know if you like find that kind of like magic zone where you're like, this is the amount of that I need like a movie to gross just so I can kind of like make another one. And that's sort of like the zone I feel like he's in, where he can, you know, he makes just enough to be able to just make the next one. He has like his audience that comes out like at his movies like do well for like how much they cost and stuff like that. Like, you know, he's not making like $300 million, you know, epic blockbusters or something like that. But like people, he at least like maintains. I think there's something about like Wes Anderson is a brand, for lack of a better word, that I think people know like what they're getting themselves into. And like, yeah, if his movies like don't, you know, maybe there'll never be another one that kind of becomes the kind of word of mouth sensation that Grand Budapest did, which even looking back,
Grand Budapest was, by the way, Grand Budapest made $59 million at the domestic box office, and that is far and away his most successful film. It made more than $100 million overseas. It's the only movie he's ever made that had global box office over $100 million. I'm not saying that box office is the ultimate judge. Goodness knows. There are tons of movies that make money at the box office that I think are absolute trash. And all you have to do is look at the Oscars every year, and the best films are often movies that don't make a lot of money. Look, Anora should have made 10 times the box office that it made. But at a certain point, I would like to see what would happen if Wes Anderson actually exposed himself to a story and to a film and a filmmaking style that would make him acceptable to more than maybe 1.5 million people in the United States, a country of 300 million people.
But do you think that would in some ways
that though?
Yeah, or like would that like it's the kind of thing of like, does that sort of dilute the thing? Like it's also like I was having a conversation with a friend of mine the other day who is basically like I told him I saw Phoenician Scheme and he was like, I like am so out on Wes Anderson, like tell me when he makes a new movie. Like a new something different than what he has been making. And I was like, but that's his style.
This guy,
and
are you sure you weren't talking about me? This is me.
No. This was actually, I'll introduce you. I think this is actually someone you work with, ironically enough. But even though I don't think the two of you have met. but I was sort of like, but that's his style. Like I always just sort of get baffled at the like, what do you want him to, what would you rather him do? I as someone who thinks in movies in these very like auteurist ways, kind of like, yeah, Wes Anderson has a very distinctive visual style, a very distinctive writing style, a very distinctive worldview. And to be like, but can you tone some of that down so that maybe like a few more people can get into the tent, is a little bit sort of like, and be like less Wes Anderson-y? Like, what's the point of that?
Well, okay, so we often talk, some of the great directing jobs out there, great directing performances, I guess you'd call it, are directors who took a risk, directors who did something unexpected. Wes Anderson hasn't taken a risk in a decade. He is making the exact same movie in the exact same style that he's been making for a long time. How about you just try it a little bit differently? How about you try a story that's a little different? How about you let your actors speak a little bit differently? How about maybe you frame things a little bit differently? Take a risk, man. Stretch yourself a little bit. Don't just do the same old boring thing again and again. And to be clear, I enjoy his movies. And Asteroid City was one of my 10 best movies of the year a couple of years ago when it came out.
Masterpiece.
But I love it. It's a great film. But I really want to see he is only making movies for the 1 to 1.5 million people in the United States who've watched his past 10 movies. And they already love Wes Anderson. Maybe, wouldn't it be interesting if Wes Anderson tried to find another million, or maybe 5 million, or 10, who he could get a message to, who he could show his vision of how to put things on the screen? Wouldn't it be nice if rather than going to the already converted, he converted a few more?
I think you're asking Wes Anderson to do something as a director he has no interest in doing, which is he's a medium in which he likes to tell his stories that seems to make both an audience he has happy. And this is me defending a guy that I'm hot or cold on. It's not like I'm already in the Wes Anderson camp. For people like me who, if I see another Wes Anderson movie again, great. If not, there's plenty of other movies out there. For him to have his own little corner
you're making my point. Josh, you're literally making my point, I think. He doesn't matter to you because you've already seen him and you know what he does. Let me ask you this. Wouldn't you be
I don't
more
think
excited
he
if I
owes
said,
it to me. I don't think he owes it to me, someone who is not the most interested in his movies, to convert me. I think as a filmmaker or an artist, he tells the stories he wants to tell. If there's an audience for him, like Grand Budapest, that's larger than usual, great. If it's something that if it allows him as an artist to tell his story, and there's an audience out there that likes the story, and the people footing the bill for this are happy because they get their money back and a little more, that's the business, man. I don't think
Yeah.
Wes Anderson's crying out to be the next Coen brothers or whatever. I think he's happy
you mean
making the
relevant
movies he wants
filmmakers?
to
He
make.
doesn't care about being relevant. Okay. If he's satisfied, fine. But
I know
as
you're not
someone
trying to
who-
argue. I know you're not trying to argue that Wes Anderson is not a relevant filmmaker. You're saying Wes Anderson is irrelevant.
No,
And that's coming
okay.
from somebody who is not a huge fan.
So relevant might be the wrong word, but
Quick
I feel like
question.
Wes Anderson isn't impactful.
Does Spike Lee try to make mainstream movies? Spike Lee
Yes
has a
and no.
vision. He has a voice. I think his most audience-friendly movie that he's made in forever is going to come out in a couple of months, and it's already critically divisive. I think Spike Lee has a voice. I think he has stories he wants to tell, and if a wider audience finds it, like Inside Man, great. If not, that's cool. There's still a ton of actors that want to work with him and a ton of studios that want to make his movies. I don't see how Wes Anderson's any different.
Hold on. Spike Lee, who has made really wildly different movies, where his movies are Black Klansman is not the same as Inside Man, is not the same as Malcolm X, is not the same as Do the Right Thing. How are you comparing that to Wes Anderson?
I'm saying that it's a filmmaker making the kind of movies he wants to make without wider concern for, am I going to hit the widest demo for this possible? Like, how am I going to get the Marvel audience to come see my movies? The people that just show up at theaters when something big comes out. I'm saying I don't think that Spike Lee is interested in that, just like I don't think Wes Anderson is interested in that. I think that they're happy in their own little part of the movie world, and they're leaving the big audience-pleasing blockbusters up to everybody else. They're happy in their little corner of the sandbox.
And yet Spike Lee has managed to be part of the national conversation, to be very impactful on how people feel about race in this country in ways that not saying Wes Anderson could address race, but just in general.
Well, he
Wes
kind of
Anderson-
does. If you look at
tiptoed
the
into that
color of
direction,
his
you
movies.
kind of wish he wouldn't.
Yeah. Yeah, right, exactly.
Yeah. But Spike Lee has absolutely been an impactful filmmaker, making movies that people talk about and it shapes their views. Come on. Do the Right Thing and Black Klansman and Malcolm X are super important movies.
But
Yeah, I'm
even
not gonna
then, I think,
argue that
I
fact
think you
with
would
you.
be
I'm just
hard
saying-
pressed to find too many current filmmakers. I mean, maybe like Tarantino or, Nolan or something like that are like of Anderson's generation who are like it's so clearly defined like what their thing is. Like even if you're not a Wes Anderson person, like I could like go to like any family member of mine or most people on the street and like they know what a Wes Anderson movie is. It may not be their flavor, but like they know what his distinct thing is. And I think that thing is undeniably like has been super influential. I mean, like I remember, here's a little like weird anecdotal story that I'll keep short. Like when I was in college like 10 years ago and was like doing film classes, so many people, you guys, you have no idea how many like bad Wes Anderson knockoff short films I've seen throughout of like, it's the kind of thing of like how like he is on that level. And I think even if his movies are not like these, he still very much exists in the art house world. Like, you can look at something like Grand Budapest Hotel, which created the phenomenon of millennial pink. Like that, like the color palettes of his movies have gone on to be like hugely stylized in the way that like so many people there was that annoying trend like a couple summers ago where everyone was like, let's create like the AI Wes Anderson Lord of the Rings or the AI Star Wars thing.
Yeah.
And maybe that was a moment that was like a crystallized for me of being like, no. It is more like his movies are more than just the like symmetrical framing and stuff like that. But I think you cannot deny that like him arguably maybe the other two people that come close, I think, are like Nolan and Tarantino has had like so much of an.
How are we talking about the same? How are we talking about Nolan and Tarantino, who do nothing but make films that they're not in the same conversation with Wes Anderson?
But
I don't know
many
how
people want to be what. There's so many like bad Wes Anderson imitators in the way that like I don't think you could find like.
That's partially because it's easy to imitate his style, I think.
And yet not that many people do it well because they think it's just the symmetry.
Yeah, I think it's easy to imitate his style poorly.
Yes.
That's why we got all these terrible... It's why we got all these terrible Pulp Fiction ripoffs in the 90s.
Right, or the terrible like post-Nolan movies where everyone's like, what if it's all a dream, or what if it's, what if I like mix around the plot to the point of it doesn't make sense and it's overcomplicated.
So I think that if you think that's all Wes Anderson is, not that I'm saying that's what you think, Jason. I don't want to put words in your mouth.
No.
But if you think that's all that Wes Anderson is, I think it would be easy to misread his films as being all the same. Asteroid City, Phoenician Scheme, French Dispatch, Fantastic Mr. Fox, Isle of Dogs, which I didn't even like. They are all very similar in style. Even his live action movies look animated.
Yeah.
But they're all very much about different things. They may go about it in the same way, but I think they're about very different things.
Look, I made my point. I think everyone understands. I'm not even saying I'm right. I'm just saying that every time I go into a Wes Anderson film, especially when I went into this film, and I had no expectations on it. We haven't heard a lot of reviews or anything like that, but it wasn't like it was really buzzy or anything. But I went in and I was like, I just felt as I sat down, I was like, maybe this is the time he will do something a little bit different. And maybe as a result, it will open him up to a little more of an audience. And by the way, the reason I want him to have more of an audience is because I think he is so brilliant about a lot of things about filmmaking. And I want more people to be exposed to that. So to some extent, I'm sitting here trashing the guy because I think he's so great.
Well,
that's my bottom line.
Yeah, I will say,
get your last word in, Josh.
Just to set the stage, I just pulled up while we were talking, I pulled up Rotten Tomatoes, which we all know is like the be-all, end-all of critical acclaim.
Hugely flawed.
Oh, yeah. And if you look, Phoenician Scheme, Asteroid City, French Dispatch, all within 1 or 2 points of each other as far as critic score and audience score. A movie that you thought was a masterpiece and a movie that made your top 10 critically is received about as well as the Phoenician Scheme. And I know that that's comparing apples to bananas, but
he's, I think, purely divisive at this point. In the spirit of ending things on a positive note, as well as maybe recommending some things for people to check out. It'd be probably kind of boring to say what our favorite Wes Anderson movie is, but since Jason brought up performances, what do you think is your favorite performance in any Wes Anderson movie?
Ooh.
Wow.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, you're putting me on the spot here.
do you
Couldn't you have prepped us for this a little bit more?
It just came into my mind. We're going off the cuff.
You go first, man.
I'll go first. I'll say Ralph Fiennes.
That's the cop out. That's the easy one.
Okay,
I was gonna say, really going out on a limb there, man.
I won't say that one. I'm gonna do a more like obscure one. I'm gonna say Bottle Rocket with Owen Wilson in Bottle Rocket. I think it's the best Owen Wilson has ever been in a movie. It's so electric and funny. I think that's also an interesting movie for people who are maybe annoyed by Wes Anderson's style to check out, because it has a lot of thematic similarities to a lot of his other movies, but it's not like the Wes Anderson style. I feel like more kind of comes into the fray around like Rushmore, his second movie. And Bottle Rocket like does not look like a Wes Anderson movie at all. I would still say it's in kind of the second tier of his movies, but one that I think I would encourage people, if you think you're not a Wes Anderson person, to check that one out, as well as just like a crazy underrated, I think, Owen Wilson performance, who's hysterically funny in it.
Okay,
All right, my pick is Jason Schwartzman in Rushmore.
I mean,
Which I haven't seen that film in a long time, but that's Jason Schwartzman's debut performance. And yeah, he crushes it in that movie.
he's just
And
electric, incredible.
You can't take
I
your
gotta
eyes
go
off
back
it.
and hot take. I got to go back and revisit because I'm not a Rushmore guy. But I will, since I dogged him a little bit earlier, I will say he doesn't, as someone who doesn't have the best reputation for women characters and non-white actors in his films, I would single out, I think Scarlett Johansson and Margot Robbie are incredible in Asteroid City. Margot Robbie comes in for one scene.
I almost picked ScarJo.
Yeah.
I almost picked that. Yeah.
Margot Robbie comes in for one scene in Asteroid City and just crushes it. And I think Jeffrey Wright in The French Dispatch is fantastic.
Oh my God, yes.
Yeah, I think his section of French Dispatch is probably my favorite one in that. And I feel like he's an actor who really gets what Wes Anderson is going for, but is still able to put his own kind of spin on it rather than just being another kind of Wes Anderson actor clone. So those will be mine. I gave you 3. You asked for 1, but I gave you 3.
Jeffrey Wright may be as criminally underrated an actor as there is in Hollywood right now.
Yeah,
so good.
What can't he do?
I still can't believe that American Fiction didn't do better at the Academy Awards.
I know.
It won screenplay.
I mean, yeah. He was
Which
still
you
my
wanted to
pick
win.
for actor, but he was up against Cillian Murphy and Oppenheimer. He was never going to win, but I wanted him to.
Yeah, I knew Oppenheimer was going to win everything, but I thought American Fiction was the better movie.
Interesting.
That's a that's a spicy meatball right there. We don't have time to get into that right now.
It's like, on that note,
If you want more of Josh, Jason, and I arguing with each other, be sure to hit like, review us, and subscribe so you don't miss out on more Movie Joust content. But until next week, go watch Asteroid City, everyone. That's just like a great movie.